Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about Trevor and Ashley Sheatz and all of the nonsense coming from Twitter that's come up from that and what it means to men, women, Christianity, and the world writ large. I've got two gentlemen with me that I greatly respect, so I'm going to go ahead and ask them to introduce themselves. Rich, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Sure. Rich Cooper, been uploading to YouTube for 11, 12 years now. Wrote a couple of best-selling books on Amazon. I create content on entrepreneurs and cars and the Unplugged Alpha podcast channel.
Awesome. Thank you. Rob, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Rob Kowalski. I probably suffered more than any other man on the planet under the false monogamy only doctrine. And now I am a biblical marriage advocate. I lead a group called Man of Options. I'm working on my second book called Man of Options, Escaping the Monogamy Only Lie. And pretty passionate about the topic at hand.
Yeah, it's really interesting. From your background, I remember that you've had a long stretch where you were kind of like the poster child for just biblical purity in terms of not betting any women. And now you kind of like, you're in a different stretch. And I think this topic really hits home to you in a lot of ways.
For sure. Yeah.
So Rob, would you go ahead and basically introduce what the controversy is?
Yeah, I mean, so I saw that post that Trevor Sheatz put up, I guess that, maybe a couple hours after he put it up. And for me, it was one of the harsher, public posts that I probably put up on this subject. It's probably more like something Rich would have said. But I just was like, this is your typical church simp story where, a woman, an X304, comes to Jesus after she hits the wall and looks for a faithful simp to clean up the mess. As a virgin, no less, which was what just made it way worse, right? Because he's the virgin and she's the promiscuous one, and then the way he worded it with the whole, she's purer than most virgins. It was very virtue signaling of the highest order. It was just really disgusting, I thought, and so yeah, I actually posted that and went to bed and didn't know what the response would be, but it was like hundreds of likes and reposts, and I was like, so that definitely resonated with people, and then the thing just went completely viral over the next few days. I mean, it's got like 75 million or maybe more even now views, which is crazy. So it's really hitting a nerve on both sides with people, and I just think it'd be interesting for us to break it down. I'm grateful to be here to have a conversation of what is it on both sides, like what is it that people are so upset about, and seeing if we can get to the root of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Rich, from my understanding, I don't think you're a Christian, so you've got a very different perspective on this than Rob and I would. So can you go ahead and briefly give us a summary of your take on this?
I mean, I've said a few times that Christ and the church seems to be like the final resting place for most hoes today. That's kind of where they go to try to get redeemed. And I get the angle because they think that their past will be forgiven and forgotten by everyone because God or Jesus or whoever does. So I see the appeal. It's incredibly unwise for a man to invite a promiscuous woman into his life as a wife or a girlfriend or anything like that, because they typically don't make very good wives or girlfriends. They cheat more often than not. They're more likely to bring STDs into the relationship. They're generally more disagreeable. If a woman's been through 50 guys, what's going to stop her from making you number 51 when things don't go well in the relationship? So those are a few things that I talk to guys about. I mean, I often indicate red flags for guys to look out for and green flags for guys to look for when it comes to relationships. I'm not particularly religious, but I mean, if I was Christian, I would have been insulted by the fact that this guy was saying that my whore of a wife is more pure than a virgin woman. Like, that's just absolutely absurd. And like the fact that he's got the kahunas to to just sit there and write this long story about his wife's disgusting past on social media and make it like she's this like forgiven, perfect little thing is just absolutely nuts. And then you see the other side of the equation where you see like, probably disgusting, whorish type of women agreeing with this statement. The plugged in simp beta male is also agreeing with this statement, like give her another chance. but there was a very harsh return from other people saying, you know, essentially, no, this is nuts. Like this ain't it. Like, this is not something you want to share publicly to the universe about the woman that you've married, the mother of your children. Like, you look absurd, bud. Yeah. So it was a really interesting, I guess, social experiment to some degree. As I understand it, the guy owns a social media agency. So there's some people that said that this was a bit of a plot or a ploy for, engineered virality, which it may have been. And then you saw the interviews with his wife talking about it. And it's like one thing after the other. And I don't really care what people say or what their views are based on, the advice of certain religions. I look at what women are and what they respond to and what the DNA forces them to do and behave like. I think the vast majority of men, if you were to ask them, have you ever recited this sentence or these words? Gee, I wish my wife had banged 50 more guys before I married her. I think if you surveyed the vast majority of men, almost none of them would say anything closely approximating that, because they're disgusted by promiscuity. Women are judged by their past. A woman's value is based on her past. A man's value is based on his future, his ability to provide. So a man being promiscuous isn't nearly as detrimental to his reputation as it is a woman. So for a husband to air his wife's dirty laundry that publicly in that fashion is just, I was just like, this is just new levels of shocking today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was disgusting. You hit on a lot of different things. So let's go ahead and hit some of this just bit by bit. The first thing that I think was really important to get at is the idea that he put out that his wife is more pure than virgins. I think that really pissed off a lot of people.
As it should.
And it should, because if you're preaching that sexual purity is the standard, and then you go ahead and have this person that has had several years of promiscuity, and they did some cam girling back in the day and all this other background, and then you put that up and above people that have followed the rules, that will piss a bunch of people off. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about that, Rob?
Yeah, no, I think what Rich said, it was probably an intentional grift. I mean, the thing I thought about a lot over the last few days, it's almost like the whole body positivity movement, right? Like, where they're trying to tell you that, fat is beautiful, and don't, this is all just, social engineering to believe that, Sydney Sweeney's hot. She's, this fat girl Lizzo's just as hot. It's like that. It's really, but what he's done is like, he lowered his standards and she lowered her standards, right? Because she was probably, he's a virgin. He couldn't get any. So he's an incel probably. And she's an X304. But so she lowered her standards, married kind of a nerdy guy that's a little bit older, and he lowered his standards and married. And they paint it like it's the ideal. That's the part that bothers me. Mm-hmm. Fine if you want to marry a girl like that. Number one, don't broadcast it. But number two, don't sell it like it's the ideal that we should all follow. No, that's not the path, bro. Like, that's the thing that pisses me off. And what he did was he dismissed the fact, the legitimate discipline that it takes for someone to maintain their virginity in this degenerate world that we live in, right? It's very hard. I was abstinent for a long time, and it was not easy. So to say that she's, purer than most virgins, and then, so it not only does it minimize the discipline that a real virgin shows to maintain that, but it also kind of diminishes her sin, so to speak, right? Like, her past is under the blood. They say that, like, dude, you could be a murderer on death row and get saved legitimately and still get executed. Like, it doesn't free you from the consequences of your actions. So, like, yeah, I think what Rich said is spot on. Like, you're going to have problems because there's legitimate psychological, emotional damage that's done through living that way. And yes, you can be forgiven. Both things can be true. That's the thing that they gaslight men. They say, oh, you don't believe in grace. No, I do. I still don't want to marry an ex-whore. Is that okay? Like, and I think that men are just waking up to it. I think that was the thing. It's like, finally, like, I went to a feminized church for a while where there were female pastors, and some of the women were, formerly promiscuous, and they get center stage, man. You're like, I'd rather you put up a girl that's an innocent virgin that never went down that path and make her the spokesperson of the church and the face, because that is what all men want, right? Like, at the end of the day, we all want this behavior to stop. Let's be honest. Like, as a Christian, I just don't want women doing this shit anymore. But so if you put, pedestalize a woman like that, or put her in the spotlight after that, you send a message to women that you can go out and have your cake and eat it too. You can live however you want. And at the end of the day, you're going to get the fairy tale. And I just don't think that's the right message, man. And I think, we got a branding problem, a serious branding problem in Christianity. So.
Sure. And I think this comes on the heels of Lily Phillips and Nala Ray and a bunch of other professional former 304s. They go ahead and come to the faith and they seek absolution. And don't get me wrong, like, yeah, your sins are forgiven if you're doing the thing and you get baptized, you repent, you actually walk the walk. But a lot of people aren't doing that. And in addition to that, they have this false belief that all the other natural and earthly consequences go away. Like you said, all of the emotional, all of the social, all of the physical ravages of sin still exist. And to go ahead and gaslight guys that they shouldn't consider this when they're looking for a wife is retarded. Like, it is insane. Like, why in the world would you go ahead and choose this person over somebody else that has done the work and has kept themselves pure? Because the challenge for men is to build themselves from nothing, because most of us come from the dirt. And all they have to do is not screw up the bag that they've been given to start. And that's the thing that is just insane, is they live life on easy mode in so many ways, and they can't even handle that. And they expect for us to take on the burden ourselves and to go ahead and be Christ-like. Got it. That's my responsibility. But I also have the responsibility of choosing who my wife is going to be. And that ain't going to be it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on?
I was just going to say I saw somebody say, you wouldn't go into business with somebody that filed multiple bankruptcies. You wouldn't let a redeemed child molester babysit your kids, right? Like, you just wouldn't do those things. So why is this different? And why do the pastors tell men you need to rescue her, or whatever BS that they feed us, right? Like, you need to 50%. I mean, the divorce rate's basically the same in the church as it is outside the church. She can take half your stuff. 80% of the divorces are filed by women. Rich, just listen to your book again. He said, you're 2 times more likely to commit suicide as a divorced man. All these things add up, and then they say, forget her past. Like, you'd have to be really, it's like one of the most important decisions of your life, who you marry, and then you're just going to forget her past. It's like, no, bro, like, we're not doing it anymore. And again, I'm glad to see that a lot of men are standing up finally and speaking up.
We have to make slut shaming great again. We really do.
Yes.
It has to be a thing. Like, it does modify behaviors. Fat shaming modifies behaviors for fat people. Broke shaming modifies behaviors for people that are unwilling to do the work and level up. Slut shaming modifies behaviors of promiscuous women.
Yes.
And, realistically, men need to reject any notion that, look, the problem that I have with most religions is there's no consistency. There's no hard and fast rules that work. It's like, oh, as time goes on, let's just cast this aside. We're not going to take this seriously. Oh, this is a little too harsh. We can't really do this anymore. Let's have rainbows on the churches and stuff like that. And I think that, if the churches want to be taken seriously, I think that guys that are godly like that, you all need to, band together and reject promiscuous women completely, not celebrate them. If God wants to forgive these hoes, let him, but men should not.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a huge white knight problem in the church. And I think
Correct.
that this reminds me of a Survivor Island where they had a men's team and a women's team. And the men's team was just like raking the women's team over the coals. And then the women's team went ahead and found a couple of the betas on the men's team and seduced them to their side to get a couple of the alpha leaders voted off. And then the men's team started lagging behind. And then eventually the women went ahead and voted off the men and backstabbed them. Like, we knew what happened. And so in the church, we have the same kind of thing happening where we have a lot of these beta simps that are constantly attacking guys that hold to their principles and are willing to stand up for truth and to say these things that are uncomfortable because we're willing to offend people to tell people the truth. Whereas I think a lot of times in the church, it is so gynocentric in so many ways that they can't have the stomach to offend women.
Yeah.
And that's really the biggest problem that I see in the church right now.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, we live in a female first primary soul shorter. It's one of the first chapters of my book. It's the world that we live in today. Women are protected, they're forgiven. and men are disposable. And men are constantly accused of being patriarchal, authoritarians. You can't be patriarchal and authoritarian and that dominant if you're disposable. If men are sent off to war, if men are drafted to go off to war to die, while women vote for the policies that allow men to go off to war and die. Men are disposable and women are protected. And that's the way things are. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. But men can still say no to hoes, you know? Men can band together and say, no, that's disgusting. I don't want anything to do with that. And I recommend men stay away from that as well.
Yeah. I think the issue too, man, I've posted before that feminism is the cancer, polygyny is the cure. And I know this conversation is not supposed to be about polygyny, but like, if you look, this isn't a new thing, like feminism infecting a culture, you know, creeping in. If you go back to Israel, you know, where, I don't know if you probably know this passage, Mike, but basically Jehoiada, Joash becomes the king at 7 years old. This is right after all the idol worship, all the Baal worship and Ashtoreth poles. Ashtoreth was like the female goddess. The country was a mess, and they had all this judgment come upon them. And Jehoiada, the high priest, gives King Joash 2 wives. He was 7 years old, so nobody can say it was about sex. It wasn't about sex. It was about putting women in their proper role, because once polygyny exposes male authority, right? It's undeniable that God gave men certain rights that he didn't give women, and it automatically puts them in their proper, you know, in the hierarchy of the relationship. It puts them in their proper, you know, place, so to speak. Order would be a better word. But in Isaiah 3, when you read that chapter, and I think that's where we're getting really close to that point, total mess, you know, comes upon the world, maybe, or some people will say it was maybe Israel, Judah, but a time of severe judgment. And then the remedy is Isaiah 4, the very next chapter. 7 women will take hold of 1 man. And in that day, the branch of the Lord will be glorious and beautiful. Polygyny heals the land. That's again what's happening. We do live in a gynocentric world. It's infected the church. Feminism has infected the church. The way to get us back is to go back to how the Bible defines marriage. A man can take more than 1 wife if he so chooses. A woman cannot. She gets 1 man for all of her life, according to the Bible. A man can have many. That's the thing that really bothered me the most with Trevor Sheatz, was because he was the virgin and she was the one with all the sexual experience. If you look at the Bible, the woman was supposed to be a virgin on her wedding night. And if she wasn't, you would stone her to death at the door of her father's house. Mm-hmm. And the man was allowed to take more than 1 wife if he so chose. Now it's completely reversed. It's the opposite of God's order. You got a virgin man committing to monogamy only to a whore. It's so backward. And that's at the root of this whole thing, is we have to get back to the way God defined it. Because look, if Rich, if I told you get a virgin wife and you can marry more than 1, you would get married. You're not against marriage. You're against marriage under the circumstances that we're in.
I'm against family law is what I'm against.
Yeah, family law is a problem too.
Dictating how my relationship is going to go. I mean, the end state of hypergamy is polygyny anyway. You know, we've already talked about this before, because women are routinely sharing the guys on the top shelf. It's just they do it in a covert way. They overtly declare monogamy to somebody, and then they covertly act in a clandestine way behind the scenes, banging a bunch of guys. Yep. And they go through that, and you know, certain numbers come up, and it's realized that they're promiscuous at some point, but you never get the real number. Yeah. And then they go and they become religious, and then they go and get forgiven, and some guy will wife them up, and it's like, really, really bad choice, man. Really bad choice. But yeah, I mean, to the point of what you're making with polygyny, it solves a lot of what you're discussing, and it also creates other sets of problems too, right?
Right.
Well, the family law issue is a problem, but if you go back to the Bible, if a woman left a man, she got nothing. She didn't get the kids. She didn't get any possessions, because, you know, God knew that they're the weaker vessel and they're more easily deceived, and her emotions would betray her. And oftentimes she will blow up her family. So the God didn't want to incentivize her to do that. So he's like, yeah, you can leave your husband, but you get nothing. So of course, women didn't leave their husbands all that often. But I was on a podcast and I said to the guys, I said, you know, like, if you go back to the Bible, it says if you sleep with an unbetrothed virgin as a man, you have to wife her. And I said, imagine if that was still the case. Imagine if the case was, look, the woman was supposed to be a virgin on her wedding night, and you could marry more than 1 if you so chose. Man, we would all get married. If they're, you know, like, people wouldn't be dragging their feet. They would get married, especially if the family law was fixed. Because I understand this is a multifaceted problem.
Sure.
But yes, I do think if at the end of the day, this is a complete inversion of God's order. So,
well, and I mean, soft polygyny is already going on right now,
100%.
where you've got a lot of women that'll go ahead and attach themselves to one man, and usually it's the guys at the top. It has always been that case. The primary practitioners of polygyny have always been the aristocracy and the people in the upper crust, because they're the ones that can actually do it, right? And they're the ones that can actually hold the frame and have all the proper provisioning for all the women. It's a reasonable thing, but in our gynocentric social order, it's insane to a lot of people, and a lot of sects of Christianity have banned it after the fact, even though it's not banned at all in scripture.
Yeah,
I really don't want to go ahead and like go down like the full polygyny route for the thing, and like that's fine. Like that's a reality that we deal with. Something that you did bring up though with Jehoiada, I think that something else in that same vein is the idea of when Josiah got to be king and they rediscovered the law, and Josiah saw all the crazy crap that was going on in the land at the time that he took that and he compared it against the law. And he's like, look, we're going wrong in all these kind of ways. He's like, we're stopping this right freaking now, and we're going to go ahead and go by the book. And I think that that's about time for it to happen in Christianity, because Rich is right. Like, we have such a terrible message for the outside because we accept all of this nonsense and we handle it the way we do, where we pedestalize a lot of these former 304s in such a way as to completely bastardize the message. Yeah, go ahead, be redeemed, but then go and sin no more and be quiet. Don't be in the limelight about everything. Don't be so forward about, oh yeah, I was a sinner. Like, don't get me wrong, like in a private testimony, go ahead and do that, but you shouldn't be putting it out for 35 million people to see. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like OJ writing a book. You know what I mean? Like, if I did it, you know, like he's monetizing the crime, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about family law, Rich, because you said that family law is like the biggest thing that you have against the way that we practice marriage right now in the West. And I'm in full agreement with that. I think that it's just generally a bad deal for men. And even with prenups, unless you do it just right, a lot of that can get thrown out. And if you're not really careful with how you organize your affairs, you can get cleaned out. And no matter what you have in terms of a prenup or a cohabitation agreement, once children are added to the mix, then all of a sudden all bets are off. You can't have anything to do with who gets to have the children or child support arrangements in a prenuptial agreement, at least in the United States. I don't know if that's the case in Canada.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, you're really rolling the dice. Like, it's really such a high risk and low reward exercise for men, and low risk and high reward exercise for women, because they generally marry up. The only time that it, you know, I often get asked, like, in what circumstance would marriage make sense? You know, like, I really got to think about it. And the only time that it would make sense to me as a guy is if I married like a billionaire, right? Mm-hmm. Like a chick that's a billionaire, there's no prenup. Then it's like, I really have nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. Like, even if I have kids with her, she's got all the money in the world. I'll just use family law to my benefit. I'll get custody. You know, it won't be a problem for me. She'll pay for all my legal bills. Piece of cake, right? But it also doesn't insure against bad female behavior. I mean, most guys aren't equipped to deal with women over the long term. They don't understand what women are. They don't understand what women are capable of. They don't understand what retains a woman in your frame in such a way that she's useful to your life. She's respectful and she adds value to it. I think the vast majority of guys get into marriages where they're some kind of a utility. They're her third, fourth, or fifth choice. You know, the guys that she wanted, she couldn't get. So she ran through and had her fun. And then the biological clock ticks. And then she's like, I got to find a guy. So this guy's good enough. He may not be quite handsome enough. He might not be quite tall enough. May not be quite rich enough, but he's good enough. And then she settles down with that guy. And when women don't get their first choice, I think that also leads to terrible divorce rates. Because after 7 to 10 years of living with a guy in close proximity that she really genuinely didn't love that much to begin with, she was just trying to go along to get along with all of our girlfriends because they're all getting married and having kids and stuff like that and posting pictures on social media and look at little Billy and Sally. And these are all great photographs. And they want to go and join the party and they want to share their social media stories. But then they realize, I don't really like this guy. 7 to 10 years later, I can untie the knot. He's got a good job as an engineer. He's going to pay for everything. The Range Rover lease is looked after. I'll have the kids most of the time. He'll get them every other weekend. I can go to salsa dancing and bang whoever the hell I want, have fun, and YOLO, right? So it's like the entire social contract when it comes to marriage commitment in or out of the church is still a problem. Like I had this stupid debate with Andrew Wilson. I think you saw it, Rob, where it's like, he's going on about, if you marry a good Christian Orthodox woman, then the chance of divorce goes down to 10%, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't care. It needs to be 0%, right? Like there has to be zero risk involved with divorce, and men need to be fully equipped to deal with divorce. And then I'm getting argued with by a guy who's married to a chubby 4 who's got 3 kids from 2 different men, and he can't open a fucking pickle jar. And guys are like, rah, 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 Andrew Wilson. It's like, your arguments don't make much sense, right? Yeah. Like we got to talk about the reality of the sexual marketplace and what women are, not what we've been told they should behave like.
Yeah, because it's not a Disney movie. That's kind of the thing, is like people are brought up to believe in true love and all this romance. And when you talk about the idea of going back to traditional marriage, it's like, sure, what traditional marriage are you talking about? Are you talking about traditional marriage of the Bible from the Old Testament? Or are you talking about traditional marriage of the 1950s, which really isn't that much better than what we got right now? Yeah. Or are you talking about traditional marriage from like the beginning of the 1800s, back when it was still the economic model of marriage, where families would get together for the sake of the family building out something so that the children and grandchildren could have something and be a workable unit for the future. But we don't do that anymore. We don't go ahead and fathers aren't helping daughters. Well, I mean, fathers aren't in a lot of the homes nowadays to begin with. So back in the day when you had families that were getting together with other members of the community to figure out, hey, what would be a reasonable match and what is each side of the bringing to the table. Right now in our society, just asking a woman what she brings to the table is offensive in and of itself, which to me is insane. Because if we're looking at the marriage as a contract, why in the world would I sign up for a contract where my counterparty is incentivized to break the arrangements?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this, because me and my wife got married at a church ceremony. We didn't go to the state. Right, like state marriage licenses are only like 100 years old, and I had something to do with like interracial marriages and Jim Crow laws. So like marriage has existed for, since the beginning of humanity. So why do we need a marriage license through the state, which is like partnering with Babylon, is what I believe, because you give up a lot of rights. You kind of like invite them into your relationship. They become that third party, and I'm like, I don't, I have nothing against marriage the way it used to be. Like I'm making a covenant. I told my wife, I'm never going to divorce you. I'm never going to cheat on you. There may be other wives. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what God wants to do. But, I'm making a covenant with you in the eyes of God, which is far more serious to me than any piece of paper that I make with the state. And, but that was it. So that to me, I love. If you're talking about marriage under those like circumstances, I would highly encourage people not to get married to the state if at all possible. Now, I may actually have to get married to the state in order to get my wife a green card, and we're still working that out. I'm still exploring some other options, but it would be a last resort kind of deal. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Because I don't think,
Well, marriage used to be about the acquisition of in-laws. Like that's what Mike was talking about. There's a book called The History of Marriage by Stephanie Kuntz. And for the longest period of time, I mean, we only invented marriage because of agriculture, because we had land, because we had oxen, because we had chickens, and we needed to give that stuff down to our kids. And there had to be some kind of like a way to sort of pass that stuff around. And that was like 10,000 years ago, right? And then you had religion that sort of brought it around. And we turned to that covenant of marriage, which was not about let's get married for love. It had nothing to do with love. It was about the acquisition of in-laws. It was about, well, her brother is a police officer and her father is a teacher and her mother is a nurse and my brother is a lawyer, and they've got all these capabilities, so we'll blend the families. You see it all the time when you watch these like cool movies about royalty and all. It's like the highbrow, lowbrow, right? Like highborn, lowborn. There was always a match, where there was a complement to the two families coming together. And if it didn't work out, he would keep everything. right? The man would keep everything, the children, whatever was acquired through the union. She would usually go back to the father, or she would go work in a brothel. And that's just the way that things were. But that changed recently, like in recent history. I don't know what it was, 200 years, 250, 300, 200, whatever it is. But that's all changed now. And the social contract is men are no longer the head of the household. It's women that are in control of the entire process, because family law puts them at that. Like the state, of course, runs the whole thing. The government runs the whole thing because they write the laws. The laws are protected of women because women are always protected and men are disposable. And this is the agreement that you move into. And I'm constantly getting banged on by like hardcore, like Christian guys and religious guys, like, just wife her up. Stop being such a pussy. Who hurt you, Rich? How much of your life did your wife take from you when you guys got divorced and she left you? And it's like, all of these idiots don't even know the real story. I left her. I didn't lose a fucking thing. I knew exactly what I was doing, right? There's still ways to strategize entering and exiting it. But in my opinion, it's just not worth it. You know, if you want to have children, you can have children, just don't live in a way that looks like marriage. If you want to love a woman, you can love a woman, just don't live in a way that looks like marriage to the government. And that's the way that I encourage guys to sort of navigate their lives. But the problem with that is it takes money, it takes influence, it takes success for you to pull it off, because women won't put up with a lot of the boundaries that you're going to set in those types of arrangements. So you're kind of like, you've got to level up and do the work to get that sort of place, right? It's really tough for guys. Like I really do empathize with men today that want to have a family, because I understand the drive. We're here to scatter seed. We want to have children, pass down our name, all that stuff. But it's like everything that you do when you enter that arena, it's like getting into the Roman Colosseum and there's tigers and lions and elephants there, and they're all trying to fuck you up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you want to go ahead and live that life, you do have to put in the work, because you need to be a certain caliber of guy so that you can actually hold boundaries and for her to respect them. That's just the truth of the matter. And what's weird about how we have this marriage system where we have no fault divorce, and basically, you know, you're operating at the whims of the woman. And so she has a natural inclination to henpeck you and to go ahead and do the betaization through 1,000 concessions. And ironically, through that very process, she will lose respect for you every concession you make, even though she's the one guiding that, which is why I think that it's much better off for us as men to be guiding them, because unguided women cause problems in so many ways. Here's where it gets incredibly nefarious, though. Like you said, that their natural inclination is to behave that way. It's not even just that anymore. Societal narrative, pop culture, and everything around it goes beyond just the natural inclination. It encourages women to put men through a humiliation ritual. You see it all the time on social media and TikTok and Instagram reels where women make fun of their husbands. You see it in advertisements on marketing for cleaning products. Any ad you'll see on TV or hear on the radio, the man, the husband, is portrayed as a bumbling moron, and she's the savior of all things that can do everything right and never does anything wrong, right? And they're always mocking his masculinity and preserving her as the authority in all those equations. And we wonder why, you know, marriages don't work today. You know, we wonder why men aren't that capable to lead, you know, the women and you know, put them in check and put their foot down and set proper boundaries for them. Very few men are in a very good position to pull off a marriage in the high risk scenario that they're in. This guy, Trevor Sheatz, give it 5 years. This is all going to implode on him. Bookmark this and go back and see where this guy is in about 5 years. I guarantee this formerly promiscuous woman that's now, you know, purer than a virgin, you'll see what'll happen. Yeah, I know I saved the post because I'm waiting to see how it works out in about 5 years. But I think it's interesting because this reminds me a lot of ways in how when you go ahead and hold this kind of woman up as the standard and you disregard all of the damage that's been done along the way, it reminds me of Titanic, the movie. So Titanic has been billed as like some great romance story. And I see Rose as the villain of the story, right? So she had this fiance that was paying her way and doing all the things. And she goes and sleeps with a homeless dude that paints her picture. And here she is later on in the story, regretting not still being with that guy and throwing this $250 million necklace into the sea instead of using that to go ahead and help her kids and grandkids. It's insane to me.
That's funny.
Well, because it's an alpha widowing thing. Like,
Yeah,
so we look at this.
That shouldn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a celebration that shouldn't exist, shouldn't be held up. And it's held up by so many women as such a great romantic story when the reality is anything but that. And in fact, so many of the movies that are like held up as great romances, like The Notebook or A Knight's Tale, all of them have to do with adultery of some sort or some kind of cheating, and holds up the cheating as the guidepost. It's interesting. I've been reading up on chivalry, which I think is kind of like the precursor to Gyocentrism in a lot of ways and the precursor to feminism. And the kind of love that we go ahead and talk about, like infatuation, back in the day, that was looked at as something to be leery of. Like, you think that they're a crazy person for acting that way, being infatuated, rather than being grounded in what life should be. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about that?
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of the Bachelorette situation. You guys heard about that, right?
Yeah.
Frankie.
Yeah, the Taylor Frankie girl.
Yeah. And you know, like, it's almost like this is purposeful, right? Because they're putting her up as the prize. So now you got this woman. I think she wasn't even single, actually. I think she was still married when the guy filed after the video came out. So she was married still, you know, divorced. Maybe that's her second divorce, 3 kids, you know, mental challenges. I mean, just a disaster. And then you're going to have all these men competing for her. It's like, what world do we live in anymore? I don't understand it. So now it's kind of infected the church, because now that's what they're doing, right? By elevating these women that have gone out and been in the streets. It's just, it's completely upside down. It's a bizarro world.
Well, if you take a look at the exact details of that season, and basically any Bachelorette season, is they usually put like a low quality TikToker, single mom. Like that Taylor Frankie girl, she's got 2 DV charges. One's a conviction, another one's an open case, 3 kids from 2 different men, kind of average at best looking, in her 30s. Yeah. And guess who's competing to marry her? An Italian prince.
Oh my gosh.
A airline pilot, a doctor, an entrepreneur. Like, you can go right down the list.
Yeah.
They'll give this woman 22 top shelf men to pick from for television, and their reward, their prize, is an average at best 30-something-year-old with 3 kids from 2 different men with 2 DV charges.
Yeah, that's the issue right there.
That's because the standard that guys are dealing with, right? And this is why you see popularized posts from guys like Trevor Sheatz putting a mediocre woman up on a pedestal, because this is part of the narrative now, right? It's it's just become normalized. Let's elevate these low quality mediocre women. Men will become less. These women will become more. And that's how things will end up being, right? But it's like, men need to push back. You know, we need to call out this stuff, and people watching this, don't be shy about pointing this out to people, right? Use your words, share it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways, the top shelf guys will still be the guys that'll have the optionality to be like, no, I'm not accepting this. And I think that what's going to end up being a problem is you've got a bunch of these low shelf guys that aren't putting in the work, don't have an idea of what masculine presence is, don't have any idea about a lot of the concepts that the 3 of us talk about in terms of knowing female nature and knowing a man's place in the world. A lot of these guys are going to be pulled astray left and right, and then they're going to be the next generations of white knights and simps that are fighting to maintain this social order.
Yeah,
100%.
Now, I've got a question for you, Rich. So during your debate with Andrew, you brought up the idea of alternate arrangements, and I thought that you made a pretty good argument because, like, sure, a lot of people don't understand how the mechanics of that would work, but it's just a matter of you need the resources to set it up properly. And yeah, it's a non-traditional arrangement, so of course there's not going to be studies about how it works. So to make an argument from ignorance is basically all you have to go on. You are putting up the idea. Now, how does this idea interact with family court in terms of child support? Because in the US, if you are cohabitating or not, if you're the father, you could still get taken in for child support, whether you not hold yourself up as being married, or if you're married, or if you're cohabitating. Regardless of how it came to be, the power of the state can reach out and grab you. I don't know how it works out in Canada, though.
Yeah, it's the same deal. I mean, you can never contract out of child support liabilities. You can structure your life in such a way that you can minimize it. You can minimize the risk. You can minimize obligation payments. You see a lot of smart athletes these days putting a lot of their assets in family members' names, and they don't even tell their wives, which is hilarious. But you see them untying the knot, and there's some like posts on social media. I was so surprised. I had no idea that he put it all in his mom's name. And it's like, the guys are kind of going, it was kind of smart. He did it the right way. But there's ways to sort of navigate this to like minimize the risk and go and do the things that you want to do anyway. I mean, there's guys that play life on even God mode. Like I'll say, top shelf guys, but there's even a level above that where it's like they'll have 3, 4, 5 baby mamas and a bunch of kids with all of them. And, if the women behave, then they get taken care of. If they're disagreeable and they cause headaches, then they're cast aside, sort of thing. Right. And I don't agree with not looking after your children. I think a man's obligation, if you're going to have children, is to look after them. But I also understand that family law encourages women to behave very badly and can enrich them in such a ways that it's detrimental to the father. So there's somewhat of a balancing act over there. But back to the original question, you don't have to worry about division of assets if you don't live in a way that looks like marriage. You don't have to worry about alimony if you don't live in a way that looks like marriage. But if you have children with a woman, you've got your obligations to pay for the child. That's it. Now, is she going to share custody? Is she going to give you good access to the kid? Or is she going to be like one of these moms that's difficult, wants to alienate you from the kid, wants to enrich her purse with child support, and most of the money goes to her and very little of it goes to the child? There's those debates and arguments to have, but a lot of the headaches that men potentially put up with are eliminated just by not living in a way that looks like marriage to the government.
Sure. And I think that's an appropriate thing. And I think most guys just don't really think through that very much because they're thinking with the wrong head a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than really being smart about the way that they structure themselves and their affairs. And I think just knowledge about structuring your affairs is just not common knowledge in our society, and takes like mentors and takes people that have been there to show you, hey, by the way, you might want to think of this before you tie the knot. Like I remember James Sexton, I'm pretty sure you two are familiar with the gentleman. He talks about how most people that sign up for marriage have no idea what the rights and obligations that they are signing up for when they sign on the dotted line. I think very few people have read the family law statutes in their area or in whatever province or state they're in to know what they're obligated to. What do you guys think about that?
It's 100% true. I mean, guys will research the fuel economy of their next new car. They'll spend more time on that topic than they will vetting the woman that they want to make their wife. And they don't understand the family law obligations. They just think if I do the right thing, everything will work out. And you can spend an afternoon in a family courtroom and see how many guys thought that they did the right thing and how they're getting treated as they untie the knot. So it's incredibly unwise for men to march into the slaughterhouse that is marriage, because it can turn into divorce without opening their eyes fully. The other really important, component that doesn't get touched on a lot, and I was talking to Andrew about this during the cast, and he didn't like it. I mean, he didn't really have a way of rebutting it, but they've studied the notion of romantic love, and over 8 odd years, I think it's 8.5 years. If you guys saw it, you know what I'm talking about. Less than 13% of couples report being in a state of love for one another. Less than 3% report being in a state of bliss, which is kind of the whole point of what marriage is. I mean, it's kind of what we're sold. It's like the notion of, oh, go get married. It'll be blissful. You'll have a lovely life. And, you'll die together holding hands, singing Kumbaya at 92 years old, right? Like, this is the idea that guys are sold. But less than 3% of those situations are ever achieved after about 8.5 years. So when you take the 50% that end up in divorce, then you keep the remaining that are still married. The vast majority of them that stay married are either there because they're cowards, they're too broke to leave, they're too ugly to leave, they don't know what to do, they're in a very difficult situation, they're financially restrained, but they're just living as roommates and people that don't even like each other. So it's like, you got to be really, really careful when it comes to making these long-term commitments to women. I think a lot of the problems that come with the loss of affection, love, compassion, the sweetness that men are supposed to get in marriage can be mitigated to some degree if they follow the ideas that I talk about in my books. But it's like, you're telling guys to do things that they don't genuinely want to do. Like, you don't have to be nice to her all the time. You don't have to give her what she asks for all the time. It's okay to say no. Sometimes the very things that women don't like can actually be good for her in the relationship, right? She's not in charge. You are, right? And when you start having these conversations, guys will get all mad and stuff like that. And you get these dorks that are in the comment, like right now, Rich looks like the standard domestic abuser, right? Like these idiots that don't even know that these notions actually exist and are factually true, because they don't want to hear these, because they're all, oh, Andrew Wilson's my God, he's the best debater in the world. And they don't understand like the intricacies of the way that women truly are. Yeah. And when you open up to these notions and these truths, man, things change so much better for guys, so much better.
That's
sure.
True.
Yeah, and I know you guys both have like not so great relationships with Andrew. I'll tell you what, like as much as hate as he's got, I think that Rachel treats him really well. And I think that in his personal life, he's got a good deal. Yeah, not a great like choice if we go ahead and look objectively. And he admits it himself. He says that like, look, I'm not going to go ahead and advise a guy to do what I did. Things worked out for me in this way, but I'm not going to go ahead and say that this is standard advice for everybody. And I think that at least the fact that he's willing to say that is something that's worthwhile, and I'll give him credit for that. Yeah,
I think the issue there, and you're right about not having a great relationship with him, is the way he's treated other women that were in the position of his now wife. So he married a woman that was older than him with 2 kids in tow by 2 different men, twice divorced, by most standards, not a high value woman, right? So he marries her after impregnating her, so he's, I just didn't like how he treats other women, calls them whores, and then married what some men would call maybe a whore, or at least low value. But I've seen him also shame men who believe in biblical marriage. So like guys that I know lived way holier than this guy. And that was the thing that kind of just irked me about him. But no, I mean, I think there's a level of hypocrisy there for sure. And then to Rich's point, I think like Andrew, probably lowered his standards, and now he just encourages other men to roll the dice, right? Because that's what he did, and it's cope though. It's really cope. That's what Trevor's doing. He's trying to feel better about the decision that he made by marrying a girl that other people would consider and making that normal for everybody. This is what everyone should do. No, let's just keep the standards high. We don't need to look. Let shame brings repentance. That's what I believe. Going back to what Rich said earlier, if we shame people for certain behaviors, you're going to get less of it. But at the end of the day, we don't need to make someone necessarily feel terrible about being fat. Can we just encourage people to be healthy? Like, let's just encourage people to be virgins. Let's put a virgin on the Bachelorette. Right, like that's what men really want. I'll swim an ocean for a submissive virgin, but
I almost wonder why they haven't done that yet. Is it because they haven't been able to find one?
Well, the women won't tune in. The women ain't
that's the problem right there. Yeah, exactly right, Rob. Like
women
if
won't
you go
tune
ahead
in,
and
and they have a hard time finding one. Yeah,
they're like, oh, this bitch, she did everything right. Like they'd hate her, but like they want to be sold the lie that you can go out and make all the mistakes and you're still going to land a prince. Come on. That's not reality. Talk to women that are out in the dating market. It's a mess. A single woman that's in her 30s, she is not getting guys lined up to marry her. She's not. It's really hard out there. And they're gaslighting the women too, because they'll a woman, imagine a married woman watches The Bachelorette. She sees it. She goes, well, shit, I could leave this chump and I could go out and find a pilot. No, it's not going to happen. Sis, you're not going to find somebody. You're going to find somebody to have sex with you. Sure, there'll be men to do that, but they ain't going to wife you. So like marriage rates are in the toilet. Divorce rates are through the roof. It's the whole thing's a mess, and it's all being purposely done to us, probably.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because in a lot of ways, like we're setting, or at least the social order is setting this up to be this way, where we don't want to pedestalize virginity and things that are virtuous. Back in the day, virtue was the thing to aim at. And nowadays we're looking at, hey, maybe don't be all degenerate, but just be somewhat degenerate. And I think that's ridiculous. Like we are much better off as guys doing the work and building ourselves up so we have the optionality to be able to vet women properly and to protect ourselves and our family line. But when people talk about this, they get shamed because you're actually giving guys the code book to break the programming that the society has tried to lock in for so long. And I think that's why there's so much pushback. More than anything else is we are actively pushing against the gynocentric social order and bringing things back into balance where we have guys as the heads of household and we have guys as doing what they need to do to ensure that their house is taken care of.
Yeah. Did you guys see the Manosphere documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was completely poisoning the well. I think the thing is this thing is it's gaining too much traction. So they need to go out and kind of, spread misinformation and try to get as many weak men to agree with them as possible, because the cat's out of the bag with it, right? And they know that men are waking up. So they're trying to just do damage control. And so they did this basically a hit piece against these guys. But I think that's all they can do now is like the guy on ESPN said, you can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it. They're trying to contain it now because it's spreading.
Well, the Manosphere has a really bad PR issue. I call it the Mano Swamp. I mean, you hear it when you get the audio files, Rob, on that chapter, and you'll understand it a little bit more. But they didn't pick the best, and even the best guy in that documentary, I would say probably Justin Waller came off, with the strongest position, unapologetic, firm, wife in a good frame with him. They still tried to, twist it around like, oh, well, he's religious. Like that's just bad. That's evil. Why does he get to do what he wants, but you can't do what you want? It's like, that's the way things are. That's the way that she's agreed to live her life with him. And she's okay with that, but they'll go in trying to shame it. And I think they did it a lot better with that girl, Angie, with Myron. I think they got the reaction or the response that they were looking for from it. They certainly played it very well, whether it was with the editing or the way they sort of prompted it. But the entire documentary, like to Rob's point, was definitely a hit piece. But you're always going to run into problems with the Manosphere. It's always going to have a bad PR issue. And for most guys that are competent and have developed some kind of a renown and a name for themselves, they're probably wise to stay away from associating with it, which is what I did years ago.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the most bombastic people that get the most clicks. And if you're the most bombastic, you've done the craziest things. And if you've done the craziest things, you have more vulnerabilities. Whereas if you're just doing your part and on your grind and showing guys the way, they have fewer things to stab you over, right? Like they didn't go ahead and pick Rolo, who's been in a marriage for 22 years or something like that, or 26 years now. They didn't pick him to talk to. They didn't pick Rich to talk to. Like you're not directly in the Manosphere, but like you are definitely adjacent. You're a reasonable guy and you can articulate yourself well, and you've got experience from running your multiple businesses. So they wouldn't be able to catch you in the same traps that they caught these guys in.
Well, yeah, that's what they go looking for. It's a red meat, and that's what sells. So that's why they go and do that kind of stuff.
So what do you guys think about the idea that, for the most part, it seems to me that former hoes are the loudest about defending hoes? Is that more or less the vibe you guys get?
Yeah, and like I said, the solution to this is more slut shaming. You have to point out the fact that promiscuity is disgusting. Men do not desire promiscuous women, with some rare exceptions. I understand that there's some cuckolds out there that like seeing their wives sleep with other men. That's why they have those corner chairs in hotel rooms. There's just a small contingent of men that likes that, but that is not the norm. The vast majority of men are put off by promiscuity, and I think it should be shamed, and I think it should be the norm. You want to encourage marriage. You want to encourage a better birth rate. You want to encourage more children, the facilitation of the growth of a good economy. Then you want to encourage women to preserve their value and men to build their value. And women's value is preserved by not being a hoe. And men's value is created by making something of themselves, by developing renown for themselves, doing something in their life. And that way, men and women can get more of what they want. But until we start shaming women for being promiscuous and close the door on it, they're always going to keep doing it. And, I did a post about this earlier today. There's a photograph somewhere of Lily Phillips circulating on a yacht with a new boyfriend or something like that. And I said very explicitly, like, women will always land on their feet. There's always a simp out there, no matter how promiscuous her past was, that will accept her. And I think we have to shame those guys too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think the caveat that I would put on your post, I think you went ahead and said, pretty women will always land on their feet. And I think there's a big difference between the unattractive women and the attractive women. Attractive women have
to some degree, all women, they might have more difficulty if they're less attractive, obese, maybe a 2 out of 10 or something like that. But all women seem to be able to land on their feet because there's so many desperate, thirsty, plugged-in beta males that are willing to look past mediocre women.
Yeah,
sure. And back to your point, I think that the idea of shaming as a society would be great. We already use shame on men. Like chivalry is kind of one of those things where it has been bred into men in the culture that they are so attuned to defend women's honor whenever possible.
Yeah.
That like, that's how we have the white knights and simps that go ahead and fight against the guys that are willing to stand up and call this crap out. That's what's going on. And it's so insane to me that even to the point of death, these guys will do that. Like, it reminds me of a chapter in one of Paul Elam's books where he talks about how in Portland on a subway car, there was a woman that had been insulted by some crazy guy, and 2 guys went up to try to stop the situation and put a stop to it, defend Milady's honor and all that. And the 2 of them ended up dead as a result of it. So not only are we going ahead and not shaming the women, we are so used to shaming men. And anytime men go ahead and shame women, you have this whole army of betas and cucks and simps that are willing to go ahead and go to bat and bloody these guys that are willing to stand up and tell people, no, this is crazy and this needs to stop.
I would add to that too, because like in the New Testament, there's a verse about this whole list of people that don't basically go to heaven. You know, all these different people. Do not be deceived. Neither the idolaters, adulterers, you know, thieves, and one in there is the effeminate. The effeminate do not inherit the kingdom. So Paul was writing to the people that were in church. So that's a severe warning for men that are in the church. What side you're on of this issue? You know, if you're a white knight and you're one of these pastors that are defending bad behavior, man, I would worry about that if I were you. There's no verse like it for masculine, and there's nothing about of toxic masculine men won't inherit the kingdom. There's no verse. There's no warning on the other side, but it says the effeminate. And if you look up effeminate, it's talking about men that act like women. So like, I would just encourage people to,
and that's 85% of the male population in North America. The vast majority of men are effeminate, plugged in beta males. You know, they're very agreeable. They nod their heads. They're useful idiots. They go out there and they get their JOBs and they live just over broke, and they'll invite mediocre women into their lives, often with, you know, multiple kids from different men with DV charges and things like that, because that's what they do. You know, they're told to be a man, you know, a real man would. And that's why we run into these problems, because men are like, everything that guys want is on the other side of raising their standards for themselves, raising their standards for the financial situation, raising their standards for the kind of women that they're going to deal with. If men would just raise their standards in all area of their life and do the damn work, you wouldn't have this problem with mediocre women being celebrated with these Trevor Sheatz posts about being former hoes and they're better than virgin women. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Rob. So you brought up 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10. That was the list that you're drawing from. There's another list in Revelation 21. And the big differentiator there is it talks about cowards. And cowards will go ahead and get thrown in the lake of fire. And that's something that we don't talk enough about as a society, that valor is like the primary male virtue, where the sin equivalent to that is cowardice. Now, the primary female virtue is chastity, whereas the sin equivalent to that is immorality or promiscuity. And we don't go ahead and tell men to lead into their gendered virtue because we're afraid of telling women to lead into their gendered virtue, right? A lot of times we want to go ahead and treat everybody like they're blank slate equals and that we're all the same. We all have the same rules. No, the rules are different between men and women. And we see that in the natural state of the world. If you look at our Bible, there's different instructions to men and women 100%. Completely. And a lot of these pastors that are effeminate will go ahead and point to Jesus and say, Jesus is the standard. I agree. But most of the time they go ahead and point at Jesus and they go ahead and give us a limp-wristed hippie version of Jesus, where all it is gentleness and we're not going to say anything mean. We're just going to be a nice guy. But they also fail to realize that he is the freaking Lion of Judah. The man goes ahead and flips over tables in the temple, calls people out, and lets them know what's what. He's unafraid to tell the truth in the face of evil. And he goes ahead and handles things appropriately. And it's interesting because a lot of these pastors will also tell you not to be stern with your wife or not to even correct your wife. But if you look at Revelation 2 and 3, the letters from Jesus to the churches in Asia, 5 of the 7 churches got letters telling them, hey, you did this okay. Here's where you're gone wrong. If you don't fix yourself, this is what's going to happen. But if you do fix yourself, you can come back, and that's going to be all right. The problem is we don't tell women where you're deficient and how you can fix yourself because we get shamed for that. Right. We have an example of how to go ahead and solve problems, but men are not nutting up to actually freaking do that in their houses.
Yeah. I tweeted the other day, women love to be held, just not accountable. Like they don't want you to set or enforce boundaries for them, you know. And again, it's I mean, like the whole female promiscuity thing, like that really is at the root of most of our mess is women being promiscuous. And then of course they want to say, well, what about the men? You know, like you're right. There are different rules for men and women. Most people don't know the Bible. And there's verses about not coveting your neighbor's wife, but there's no verse for women about not coveting your neighbor's husband. Why? You know, why is that? Because there's different rules. You know, this is why there's no such thing as a male virgin in the Bible. A lot of people don't know that. I never even thought about it. Something that someone pointed out to me recently. There was a virginity test in the Bible for women. She had to prove her virginity on her wedding night, right? There's no virginity test for a man. He doesn't have a hymen. It's not even a thing in the Bible, a male virgin, right? Yeah. So like it completely different rules. But again, most people don't even
hate that though. Like when there's not a way that they can twist and manipulate. Yeah. They really, really hate that. That really, like, it really bugs them that we can judge them for being promiscuous, but they really can't successfully judge a smart guy for doing the same thing. Because all we have to do is say your value is based on your past. My value is based on what I bring to the table and what I can do in this relationship. My past isn't significant. In fact, I would argue that if you're a virgin man, it's probably more of a put off for women today than it is a turn on.
100%.
Oh, absolutely. So I got something on this. So it's interesting because whenever guys go ahead and shame women in the church for promiscuity, their reflexive thing is, but men. Well, men and promiscuity is not really that big of a deal in the church. It's mostly they bring up pornography. And the reason why they bring it up is because being promiscuous as a woman is easy. Being promiscuous as a man is not. Yes. The male equivalent to that is men going ahead and seeking pornography as the easy way out. So in both instances, you're judging people for the easy way out, whereas they're not going to bring up male promiscuity really with any seriousness in the church because there aren't that many guys in the church that really have it like that. And if they do, they're the ones that are still getting picked. And in fact, those are the ones that while they're sitting in the pew and while they're up, you know, reading their Bible, the wives of the other men or the other single women are looking at that guy going, man, I wish I was with that guy.
Right. Well, one thing I pointed out or mentioned before is the equivalent of a promiscuous woman isn't a promiscuous man. It's a man who gave away. Imagine a man that proposed to every woman that he dated. A woman will be repulsed by that man because he is the gatekeeper of commitment. She's the gatekeeper of sex. So, you know, she's giving out sex to pretty much, you know, anybody who wants it. And he's giving out the commitment to anybody who wanted it. You would be repulsed by that. A woman would be repulsed by that man in the same way a man is repulsed by a woman that slept with everybody, right? Because he just was like so desperate to marry someone that he was just, you know, which honestly, Ashley and Trevor Sheatz, they're actually kind of a good fit because he's an older virgin man, right? And she's I don't know how old she is, but she's an ex-promiscuous woman. So both of them kind of, on the SMB level, they kind of fit, right? Again, I didn't like about the whole situation was painting it like it was ideal. The whole pure of the virgins. And there was another line there too. I don't know if you caught it, Mike, but he said basically that she's more easily able to live out the love of God because of her past for being forgiven for much or something like that. And it was like,
oh yeah.
So we should all just go out and, you know, roll around in the dirt so that we can learn how to love God more because that, you know, that'll teach us, you know, because we're forgiven for more more of our mess, we're going to love God on a deeper level than the average believer. It was just all a bunch of BS.
Sure. And then they completely ignore what Paul says is like, oh, should we go on sinning so that grace may abound? And he says, may it never be. Like, that's the idea. It's like, look, you don't just do this for the sake of doing it and then go ahead and be proud about it. And then like have it on your mantle as like a trophy of some sort. That should be a source of shame that you had that in your past. And all these women are so accustomed to not bearing shame in anything that why would they go ahead and bear shame on their past?
Here's the interesting thing, right? We're talking about this promiscuous women marrying this virgin guy. If the world were a just and equal place, hoes would get incompetent losers, because that's the equivalent of a promiscuous woman. A woman's value goes down with every man she shares her body with. A man's value goes down if he's incompetent, not resourceful, doesn't have any renown for himself, is kind of a dorky loser sort of thing. So the ideal match should be hoes with dorks, but you don't get that. You still get hoes on The Bachelorette, presented to 22 men that are pilots, entrepreneurs, doctors, and fucking Italian princes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's insane that they got an Italian prince to go ahead and go on that season of The Bachelorette. But I think that we went ahead and really hit this hard. I think the big takeaway for guys is let's bring shaming back again and do the freaking work.
Amen.
Right? Yeah. So, Rob, do you have any closing thoughts on this? Because I know that Rich has got some time constraints, so we want to go ahead and be respectful of his time.
No, I think we covered it all. It's funny that you mentioned that make slut shaming great again, because I actually tweeted that out the other day, and I posted it to my Facebook, and it got like there's over 500 comments and hundreds of likes. The comments are both sides, as you can imagine, but it's resonating with people. So I do think, Mike, you posted something recently about how encouraged you were to see so many men speaking up about this situation. And dude, I'm so excited, because before I felt like I was on an island, because I had a parachurch ministry a while back, and I posted something that said parachurch ministry is basically like, it's kind of like a church, but I don't know, Rich knows what it is, but basically it was like an undercover way to get people to come to church. Anyway. And I posted, when a man wants to settle down and have children, he's looking for a wife, all caps, wife, not the town bicycle. I posted that, and dude, all these women formed a witch hunt and freaking canceled me, right? Like I had to resign from the parachurch ministry because I was doing so much damage just for that one message, right? Like, so now I feel like men are, we're able to stand up and say something finally. There's a lot of people that are, and they're not worried about the repercussions. And there's just too many of us that see this. If we all stand up at the same time and speak up, we can maybe affect some real change. So I'm encouraged.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because guys, they need to build themselves up to the point where they are cancel proof. Like right now, I can go ahead and speak confidently about this kind of thing because I can't be canceled. Like I have enough assets and enough business income coming in where I don't have any issues, where if somebody were to go ahead and try to get on me, I wouldn't have any problems. So I'm willing to go ahead and speak more confidently on the matter. And it's interesting because you talk about how not a whole lot of guys are fighting for this. Like late last year, I had to go ahead and fight in my own congregation against egalitarianism with another deacon. And I was like, nah, that isn't how this works. He was talking about mutual submission on a Wednesday night. And I'm like, hey, mutual submission isn't a thing in the Bible, just letting you know. And he's like, no, it's right here. And I'm like, nah, you got it wrong. And I went ahead and went through the whole thing, and he got all upsetty spaghetti. So we had to go to the elders about it. So I'm like, all right, no, I'm going to lay out the case for biblical patriarchy. This is the thing. This is what's in the book. Everything else that you're trying to bring in, one, isn't in the book. Two, showed up in 1850 when feminism started up. Nah, none of this. And the elders sided with me, and they were down with it. So I'm like, yes. And so now I can go ahead and be confident in my leadership. And like down the road, if I end up getting selected for that, I'm going to go ahead and go to bat for the guys because that's the right thing.
It's amazing.
Rich, what do you got? Do you got any closing thoughts on this?
Not really. I've kind of said everything that I needed to. I think it's been a good conversation that needs to be had, and we should have more of this. And I think that men, if you don't have a platform, you don't have a podcast, have these conversations with people around you. You talk to your friends, you talk to your family about it. They may not like some of the things that you say, but just spread the word and tell the truth. And this is just the way things are.
All right. Rich, would you like to go ahead and plug any of your things? We have plenty of links down in the description below for a lot of Rich's stuff. Is there anything else you'd like to go ahead and plug?
Yeah, I mean, I would just start with the website, and like the cheapest way to sort of get started would be the books that are on Amazon. They've sold real well. It's a nice distillation of all the knowledge that I've accumulated in the last 12 odd years. I have a new book out called Top Shelf Man. There'll be an Audible version out hopefully in the next week once we get all the editing done. But yeah, that's where I would start. Thanks.
Awesome. Rob, do you have anything you'd like to go ahead and plug?
Yeah, you can just find me at my website, robbkowalski.com. I do run a small men's program called Man of Options, and we got about 30 guys in there. All of them are Christian men. Most of them believe in biblical marriage, so they may or may not be pursuing having more than one wife, but they all, believe what the Bible says about marriage. And it's really just a way to level up with a group of guys, to do the work on yourself that Rich talks about. Actually, we're reading or listening to Top Shelf Man, which is Rich's new book next week. That's our new book of the month. And yeah, it's a brotherhood, of guys that are doing the work on themselves in order to be the kind of man that could even deserve one wife, but possibly even that a woman would gladly share. So that's what Man of Options is about. Manofoptions.com.
Awesome. And then the way that I would close out, would say that men, find a brotherhood to fight against the hordes that are going on right now. You can go it alone, but you are much better off if you have somebody to your left and to your right where you can stand together against these things with, because life is a team sport. And yeah, we have to be independently competent so that we can be a valuable member to a team. But the team is what gets things done. Every great business isn't just one guy. It is one guy that goes ahead and leads a team of people toward an objective to solve a problem. Be the kind of guy that solves a problem in this world. Thank you guys so much. And that'll wrap it up.
Thanks, Mike.